Hey warrior, stop for a moment. Let the noise of the world fade into the background. Let the constant hum of urgency dissolve even for a heartbeat. You don't need to be anywhere else right now. You don't need to prove anything, fix anything, or explain yourself to anyone. Just breathe. Feel the air move through you, slow, deliberate, alive. In that single breath, the world softens. The masks fall away. The noise retreats. And what remains is something ancient, something still you. Not the version the world molded. Not the role you've been forced to play, but the quiet awareness behind every thought. That still, observing consciousness that watches it all unfold, the doubts, the ambitions, the comparisons, the chaos. It's the part of you that never breaks, even when everything else does. The part that has always been here, untouched by failure, unshaken by the storm. That's the real you, and it's time to come home to it. Every morning, before the world claws at your attention, before the weight of expectation presses against your chest, there's a sacred silence, a space between waking and reacting. Most people skip past it. They reach for their phones, scroll through distractions, and let the world tell them who to be. They rush into the storm before they've even remembered the sky. But not you, not anymore. Because somewhere deep inside, you've begun to understand that how you start your morning determines the shape of your mind, and how you train your mind determines the shape of your life. Each dawn is a test. The world will whisper its lies. You're behind. You're not enough. You should be more. And if you don't answer back with clarity, those lies will plant themselves in your thoughts, growing roots that twist around your peace. But you have a choice, a sacred one, to begin again within, to rebuild your inner world before the outer world rebuilds your fears, to remind yourself that you were never meant to chase peace. You were meant to create it. Because peace isn't found in comfort. It's found in clarity. It's found in the strength to look within and say, before I face the world, I will face myself. That's what this path is, the Stoic path to self-love. A journey not built on indulgence, but on discipline. Not on perfection, but on presence. Not on pretending you're unbreakable, but on realizing you've always had the power to rebuild. You see, the modern world trains you to react, to wake up in defense mode, chasing things you can't control. But the Stoic trains the opposite muscle, stillness. The ability to observe without attachment, to witness without collapsing, to feel deeply, yet remain unmoved by chaos. That is mastery, not suppression, but sovereignty. To be still in a storm and say, this may shake the surface, but it will not sink me. Most people wake up already losing, not because the day has defeated them, but because their mind has. Before they've even risen, they've already surrendered to thoughts that weaken their spirit. I'm not ready. I'm not enough. I'm behind. They step into the day carrying invisible chains, expectations, regrets, comparisons, dragging them through every hour. They mistake motion for meaning, and in their rush to keep up, they lose themselves. But not you, because you've begun to see the truth behind the noise. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your mind. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That realization changes everything. It means peace isn't given, it's trained. It means love isn't found, it's remembered. It means that every thought is an act of creation, building the architecture of the world you experience. Your mind is not a mirror, it's an architect. It doesn't just reflect reality, it constructs it. And if you don't train that architect, it builds from fear, not freedom. So if your mornings begin with doubt, your life echoes it. But if you begin with intention, your days align with purpose. Because the mind is always listening. It obeys the voice you speak to it with most often. If you wake with worry, it builds walls. If you wake with gratitude, it opens doors. You become what you rehearse, and every sunrise is your stage to rehearse strength or surrender. The choice is yours every single day. This isn't motivation. This is training, the daily discipline of shaping perception, the art of returning to what you can control and releasing what you can't. That's the Stoic's way, not to escape emotion, but to master it, to feel the full weight of life and still choose peace, to live deliberately, not reactively, to act with intention, not impulse, because peace isn't a mood, it's a practiced response. Self-love in this light isn't comfort, it's respect. It's the decision to stop betraying your peace for other people's approval. It's the strength to stop negotiating your worth. It's the quiet courage to look in the mirror and say, I am enough, even as I evolve. The world sells love as comfort, but Stoicism teaches love as strength. To love yourself is to stop running from your reflection, to stand in your own silence and not feel the need to fill it, to sit with your pain and listen to what it's teaching you. You see, real strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. It's quiet, patient, grounded. It's found in the calm breath before the storm, in the choice to respond with grace instead of reaction. The Stoics understood this. They knew that control begins where emotion ends. That peace isn't found when life gets easier, but when the mind becomes stronger. Every morning is a chance to train that strength, to lead your thoughts before they lead you. Each day, your mind wakes up waiting for orders. If you don't give it direction, it defaults to fear. It replays failures, predicts disasters, and repeats old patterns that kept you small. But that isn't destiny, it's habit. The mind, left untrained, will return to its oldest scripts. But here's the truth that Stoicism hinted at long before modern science could prove it. The brain can change itself. Neuroplasticity, the biological mirror of philosophical growth. Every thought repeated carves a pathway. Every act of awareness strengthens a connection. The more you return to stillness, the more your brain learns to make stillness home. When Marcus wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," he was describing what neuroscientists now call adaptation. Your thoughts become your neural fabric. What you practice mentally becomes your emotional reality. That's why this morning practice matters, because each dawn is an opportunity to rewire the self, to stop surviving on autopilot and start living intentionally, to remind yourself, I don't need control over everything. I need clarity over myself. Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body, meaning the resistance you face each morning, the temptation to scroll, the weight of yesterday's doubt, the noise of expectation, all of it is your training ground. It's the arena where peace is forged. And each time you rise above it, you grow stronger in silence, in focus, in self-respect. So this is your moment, this breath this morning. A new chance to remember what you've always known, that the mind is both your weapon and your peace. That every sunrise is not just another day, but a sacred call to train your inner world before the outer world begins its pull. To wake up and whisper, today I choose awareness. Today I choose purpose. Today I choose myself. Because in the end, your life will not be shaped by what you control, but by how you respond. And it all begins right here in this breath, in this stillness, in this sacred return to your mind. Every human being stands at the same crossroad every morning, between the person they've been and the person they could become, between the noise of the world and the silence of truth, between reaction and creation. Most never pause long enough to notice this intersection. They wake up and move, pulled by invisible strings of expectation, chasing things they don't even remember choosing. They live in a trance, a blur of shoulds and have-tos, and call that living. But the truth is, they're not alive, they're just awake, and there's a difference. You, however, are beginning to feel it, that quiet tension between who you are and who you know you could be. It's not dissatisfaction, it's awakening. It's the soul's way of reminding you that comfort is not peace, that the life you're meant for demands something greater than drifting through days on autopilot. Because the greatest war is never against the world, it's against the part of you that resists growth, the part that fears stillness because it exposes truth, the part that would rather scroll through illusions than sit with reality, the part that would rather perform strength than practice it. The central struggle of the human experience has always been this: to master the mind before the mind masters you. Everything else, success, love, fulfillment, is downstream of that one truth. The battlefield is invisible, but its effects are everywhere. You can see it in the exhaustion of a soul that's been stretched thin by comparison, in the eyes of someone scrolling endlessly for meaning, in the heart that no longer trusts its own rhythm because it's tuned itself to the noise of others. That's the cost of a distracted mind, a slow erosion of self. The Stoics saw this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire, understood the same truth you're facing today in your quiet room. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He didn't say the quality of your circumstances, your possessions, or your reputation, but your thoughts. Because everything external changes, but the mind remains the one domain where your power is absolute. If you lose that, you lose everything, even if the world calls you successful. Think about it. How many times have you had everything you thought you wanted, yet felt hollow inside? How many victories have you reached, only to realize the peace you were chasing wasn't at the finish line? That's because peace doesn't wait at the end of achievement. It begins where awareness begins. You don't find peace by adding more. You find it by letting go of the false narratives that say you're not enough. The central premise is simple but not easy. You are not at war with the world. You are at war with your own untrained mind. When you wake up and immediately enter reaction to messages, to emails, to emotions, you give away the most sacred resource you have, your focus. You let the outside world decide your inner weather. You trade sovereignty for stimulation, and that trade slowly steals your sense of self. You forget that before the noise there was clarity, before the chaos there was calm, Before the mask, there was you, the quiet observer beneath it all. Most people spend their lives reacting to life instead of responding to it. They live in constant pursuit of approval, of success, of meaning, without realizing that meaning can't be chased, only created. You can't find peace by sprinting toward it. You can only find it by standing still long enough to remember where it lives. And that's within. The Stoics didn't wake up and pray for easy days. They prepared for hard ones. They rehearsed peace until it became muscle memory. They understood that control begins with perception, that the mind interprets every event before the soul reacts to it. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events but from our judgments about them. It's not what happens that breaks us, it's what we tell ourselves about what happens. The same storm that destroys one person becomes the training ground for another. The difference is not fate, it's focus. It's the discipline to control the narrative, not be controlled by it. That's the central premise of the Stoic mind. Perception is everything. Train it and life transforms. Neglect it, and even comfort becomes chaos. And yet the world doesn't teach us this. It teaches distraction over discipline, reaction over reflection, comfort over courage. It glorifies busyness as meaning and confusion as depth. We measure worth in likes and numbers, forgetting that stillness has always been the truest mirror of strength. We've learned to perform instead of perceive, to chase instead of choose. But beneath all that noise, your soul keeps whispering, remember. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Remember that peace was once natural to you, that you were born still, before fear trained you to rush. The tension between your present and potential isn't something to escape, it's something to honor. It means you're waking up. It means the illusion is cracking. It means you're finally ready to stop surviving and start living consciously. And that's where the real journey begins, not when you conquer the world, but when you reclaim your mind. Because that's the true empire, and every morning is your chance to rule it. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not reacting? Who am I when the world is silent? Who am I when I stop trying to become someone and simply am? Those questions aren't rhetorical, they are gateways. Step through them often and the answers will reshape your life. Because every reaction you resist, every moment of stillness you create, every time you choose awareness over impulse, you are returning home to your true self. This is the central premise of your transformation, that your mind, trained in stillness, can turn any chaos into clarity, that your thoughts, disciplined by truth, can build a life no external storm can shake, that your peace is not dependent on life being easy, but on your ability to remain unmoved when it is. Because when the world demands reaction, stillness becomes rebellion. And in that rebellion, you find freedom. So when you wake tomorrow and feel the weight of the day pressing in, remember this moment. Remember that you've stood at this crossroad before and you'll stand there again. Remember that you have the power to choose direction, to lead your mind instead of follow it. And when the noise rises, whisper softly to yourself, I am not what happens to me. I am how I choose to meet it. That is the foundation. That is the premise. That is where mastery begins. Your mind is the forge. Your thoughts are the fire. Every belief, every reaction, every quiet assumption about who you are, that is the metal being shaped in the flames of perception. And whether you become weapon or armor depends on the discipline of that mind. Because the truth is, the universe does not shape you with comfort. It shapes you with challenge. It does not whisper affirmation. It hands you resistance and says, here, build strength. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience gave us language for it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. These weren't poetic musings, they were survival codes. They knew the mind was a living structure, plastic, adaptive, capable of transformation. And centuries later, science would confirm it. Your thoughts carve neural pathways like rivers etching canyons through stone. Repetition becomes identity. Focus becomes destiny. Every time you choose awareness over impulse, you rewire yourself. Every time you hold still in the face of chaos, you teach your brain that peace is possible. This is neuroplasticity in action, the science of Stoicism made visible. What the ancients called virtue, we now call neural alignment. What they practice through reflection, we now measure through rewired circuitry. And yet the essence remains the same. Control the inner and the outer will follow. But most people live in reverse. They try to control everything external, the opinions of others, the uncertainty of life, the weather of circumstance, and they call that living. It's like trying to rearrange the waves instead of learning to sail. The Stoic path teaches the opposite. Let the sea be the sea and master the vessel. Let the world be wild and cultivate the calm that cannot be stolen. Because peace isn't the absence of storm, it's the skill of remaining steady within it. Think of your thoughts like weights in a gym. The ones that hurt to lift are the ones that make you stronger. The ones you avoid are the ones you need most. Every challenge you face, every heartbreak, every disappointment, every quiet night where your mind feels like an enemy, that is your training ground. The Stoic warrior does not flee from struggle, he refines himself through it. He meets the weight of life and says, "Good, another chance to practice." Viktor Frankl, who endured what few could imagine, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that breath, is everything. It's the invisible gap between reaction and choice, chaos and clarity, destruction and discipline. That space is your forge. When you rush through it, you shatter. When you hold it, you create." Modern life tempts us to close that space. We are conditioned to react instantly, to stimuli, to opinions, to fear. The faster the reaction, the more we feel alive. But that speed is an illusion. The Stoic mind slows down time. It creates that sacred pause, that breath of awareness, and in that breath the world reorganizes. Because in that stillness you remember, you are not thought, you are the observer of thought. You are not emotion, you are the witness of emotion. You are not chaos, you are the space that contains it. Imagine your mind as a clear lake. Every thought is a stone thrown upon its surface. The untrained mind reacts to every ripple, chasing waves that fade before they're even understood. The trained mind watches them rise and fall, unmoved, knowing that clarity returns when disturbance is allowed to pass. That's what Stoicism trains, not suppression, but understanding. Not numbness, but neutrality. Not detachment from life, but mastery within it. Your thoughts build patterns, and your patterns build you. You cannot think like a victim and expect the life of a victor. You cannot feed your mind chaos and expect peace. The brain is obedient. It becomes what you repeatedly tell it to become. If you feed it fear, it will find more to fear. If you feed it gratitude, it will find more to honor. The Stoics didn't preach positivity. They practiced precision. They directed thought like an artist directs color, carefully, intentionally, deliberately. In the silence of morning, Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, "Today, I will meet ungrateful men, arrogant men, deceitful men." He didn't do this to complain, he did it to prepare. He understood that expectation is the root of disturbance. To expect fairness from the world is to wage war on reality. The Stoic does not demand the world to change. He changes how he meets it. He rehearses adversity in his mind so that when it arrives, he greets it as an old friend. This is what training the mind looks like: repetition in the unseen moments. No audience, no applause, just you and the mirror of your own thoughts. You catch yourself judging and you practice compassion. You catch yourself reacting and you breathe. You catch yourself doubting and you observe instead of indulging. This is not weakness, this is mastery. Because to remain calm when chaos calls your name, that is strength of the highest order. There is an art to thought. A disciplined mind is like a sculptor, each idea a chisel strike, shaping the marble of the soul. The untrained mind swings wildly, breaking more than it builds. But the master moves slowly with awareness, understanding that every strike leaves an imprint on eternity. Your words become your reality. Your self-talk becomes your identity. Your focus becomes your fate. Science confirms what the ancients intuited. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you rehearse gratitude, you strengthen the pathways of appreciation. Every time you choose patience, you lengthen your emotional fuse. Every time you observe instead of react, you build neural resilience. Stoicism is not cold detachment, it is emotional fluency. It is the mind learning to dance with life without losing balance. And so the philosophical foundation stands upon this truth. Control is not about domination, it's about alignment. It's the inner architecture that allows you to live in harmony with what is. You cannot control the world, but you can control your perception of it. You cannot choose what happens, but you can always choose what it means. And meaning, chosen consciously, becomes power. So the next time you feel lost, remember, your thoughts are not commands, they are suggestions. You do not have to believe everything you think. You can pause. You can breathe. You can choose a different response. That moment of choice, that single breath between stimulus and reaction, that is the essence of both stoicism and freedom. Because in the end, mastery is not about escaping emotion. It's about remaining free within it. The goal is not to feel nothing, the goal is to feel everything without being consumed. To look at life with all its beauty and brutality and whisper, I remain. That is the power of the trained mind. That is the forge. That is the fire. You wake up before the sun, the room still painted in shadows. The world outside hasn't stirred yet, but inside your chest, a quiet war is already unfolding. You stare at the ceiling, caught between two voices, the one that whispers rest and the one that demands rise. The weight of yesterday still lingers on your shoulders. The regrets, the doubts, the invisible bruises that never show. You take a deep breath, and for a moment it feels like too much. The thought of repeating the same routines, facing the same obstacles, pushing through the same silence, it feels endless. And yet, something deep within refuses to yield. That's the part of you the world will never understand. You roll out of bed and your feet touch the cold floor. Every movement feels heavier than it should. The mind begins its games, whispering lies, magnifying fears, reminding you of every failure. It tells you you're behind, that others have gone further, that maybe you're not enough. It plays the old familiar tune of inadequacy. But beneath that noise, there's another sound, faint but real, the heartbeat of resolve. You know this voice. It's the one that never shouts, never begs, never complains. It just is. Steady, patient, waiting for you to remember who you are. You stumble through the day. You make mistakes. You speak words you didn't mean, stay silent when you should have spoken, and watch opportunities slip through your fingers. You see others succeed effortlessly, while your progress feels like dragging chains through mud. There are days you give everything you have, and life gives you nothing in return. You pray for a sign, and the only answer is silence. You start to wonder if the silence means abandonment, but maybe, just maybe, it means preparation. Because the truth is, you don't grow when things go your way, you grow when they don't. You don't find strength when everything is easy, you find it when your soul is tested in darkness. The Stoics called this the furnace of character, the place where weakness burns away and what remains is pure will. You can't fake that. You can't shortcut that. You have to walk through the fire. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's lonely. But that loneliness is the birth of clarity. That pain is the proof you're evolving. You fall again and again, sometimes from exhaustion, sometimes from doubt. But every time you fall, you rise, maybe not quickly, maybe not cleanly, but you rise. And that act, that simple, quiet act, is everything. Because resilience is not loud. It's not fireworks or speeches or perfect comebacks. It's the silent, stubborn refusal to surrender. It's the moment you whisper, "Not today," when every part of you wants to quit. There will be days when your heart feels heavy and your purpose feels distant. You'll question why you started, whether it's worth it, whether you're even capable. That's when you must remember, everyone who ever built something great walked through that same fog. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not in peace but in war. Seneca wrote his letters in exile. Epictetus taught from a place of slavery. Greatness has never grown in comfort. It is born in resistance, and so are you. You will be misunderstood. You will be doubted. You will outgrow people who refuse to grow with you. That's part of it. Because the higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes, not because you're doing something wrong, but because few are willing to breathe that deep. Solitude isn't punishment, it's the price of evolution. You can't carry everyone up the mountain, but you can lead by example. You can show that it's possible to walk through pain and still remain whole. You'll learn that comparison is poison, that no one's timeline is yours, that every journey has seasons, some radiant, some brutal, all essential. You'll stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Why not me?" Because life doesn't choose its warriors by chance, it chooses them by challenge. The greater your storm, the greater your calling to master stillness within it. You will learn that what you once called failure was not punishment, it was refinement. There will be moments when you're surrounded by people and still feel unseen. You'll smile, but the eyes in the mirror will know the truth that you're tired, that you've given more than anyone realizes. But that's the paradox of strength. The world only sees the surface. It never sees the battles beneath. It sees your calm and calls it luck. It sees your discipline and calls it talent. But you know what it really is? It's hours of unseen struggle. It's the decision to show up when no one claps. It's the quiet promise you made to yourself and kept, even when no one was watching. And one day you will notice it, not suddenly but gradually. The things that once broke you no longer have the same power. The words that once wounded now pass through you like wind. The fears that once controlled you have lost their grip. You've changed not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. You've trained your mind to meet chaos with calm, to meet uncertainty with patience, to meet pain with understanding. That's growth. That's freedom. You'll realize that resilience isn't about avoiding the fall, it's about falling with grace. It's about trusting that even when the world collapses, you will not. That even when everything external shatters, there's something unbreakable inside you. Something that no failure, no rejection, no loss can touch. That's the soul, the indestructible core that Stoicism teaches you to find. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every heartbreak becomes wisdom. Every failure becomes a teacher. You stop running from pain and start learning from it. You stop fearing change and start embracing it. Because you finally understand, growth and discomfort are the same thing seen from different sides. You can't evolve and stay comfortable. You can't awaken and remain asleep. You can't build strength without struggle. And slowly your relationship with pain begins to shift. It stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like practice. You no longer see obstacles as barriers but as invitations. Every challenge whispers, "Come meet yourself here." Every disappointment says, "Let's see how deep your patience goes." Every failure asks, "Do you still believe?" And your answer, through tears, through fatigue, through the trembling voice that refuses to break, is always the same: yes. Because that's who you are. You are not the mistakes. You are not the failures. You are the strength that rises between them. You are the calm after the storm, the stillness after the struggle, the flame that refuses to die. You've fallen 1,000 times, and yet you're still here, not by accident but by choice. You've chosen to rise. You've chosen to fight. You've chosen to believe that something greater waits on the other side of pain. And when you look back one day, you'll see it, that every moment of doubt was necessary, that every fall carved depth into your soul, that every heartbreak taught you how to love without attachment, how to live without fear, how to stand without approval. You'll see that nothing was wasted, that the pain you hated was the very thing that shaped you, that all along you were being refined, not ruined. This is the emotional journey, not a path of perfection, but of persistence. Not the story of never falling, but of never staying down. Because to live is to struggle, and to struggle consciously is to awaken. You rise not to prove the world wrong, but to prove your soul right. You rise not to become someone else, but to remember who you already were beneath the doubt. You are not broken. You are becoming. There comes a point, usually in the quiet after the chaos, when something within you finally shifts. You stop asking life to be easier. You stop demanding the world to understand. You stop begging for the noise to fade. Instead, you exhale. You release. You begin to see clearly, not through the lens of pain, but through the eyes of wisdom. That's the moment the Stoic awakening begins. Because the truth isn't that life got better, it's that your perception did. The same storm that once drowned you now teaches you how to breathe underwater. The same weight that once broke you now becomes the very resistance that builds your strength. Nothing outside changed, you did. Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." You finally understand, pain doesn't come from events, but from your interpretation of them. And the instant you change how you see, You change how you suffer. This is the reframe. The moment when the chaos stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like practice. When "why is this happening to me?" transforms into "what is this teaching me?" You begin to notice your power was never in control. Your peace was never in certainty. Your freedom was never in perfection. It was always in perception. You stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that happens for you. Even the heartbreaks, even the rejections, even the long nights where you couldn't see the point. Because every storm is a teacher in disguise. Every ending is a sacred doorway to beginning again, stronger, softer, wiser. And when that realization hits, something deep in your soul whispers a word that changes everything. Amor fati, the love of fate, not acceptance, not tolerance. Love, the willingness to embrace everything that happens, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Because life isn't random, it's rhythmic. Every challenge was preparing you for the moment you'd finally open your eyes and understand. It was never working against you. It was always working within you. You stop resisting the storm and start dancing in the rain. You stop asking "why now?" and start saying "yes now." Because amor fati is not passive surrender, it's active alignment. It's the audacity to say, "I will not only accept what happens, I will love it, because it's shaping the person I was always meant to become." And in that love you find freedom. Because once you stop fighting what is, you reclaim the energy to create what can be. You stop wasting your spirit on resistance and start investing it into response. That's the Stoic secret, not control but clarity. Then another truth follows, memento mori. Remember you must die. Not as a morbid thought, but as a sacred reminder. That life is fleeting. That every sunrise you witness is borrowed light. That every breath is a gift you'll one day give back. Most people fear that truth. They run from it, numb it, ignore it. But you learn to hold it close. Because memento mori is not about death, it's about urgency. It's about living with such depth that every moment becomes holy. You realize you don't have time to waste on comparison. You don't have time to feed resentment. You don't have time to wait for the world's permission to begin. You are here now, breathing, becoming. And one day that will end. So you stop drifting. You stop waiting for peace to arrive. You stop saying "one day." You start saying "today." Because death is not the opposite of life. It's the reason to live it fully. To wake up with gratitude, to love without hesitation, to speak truth even when your voice shakes. To honor this fragile, fleeting existence by being present in it. And when you live with that awareness, life itself transforms. The small annoyances lose power. The petty arguments fade. The noise quiets. Because you realize nothing lasts, and that's what makes everything meaningful. Memento mori strips away illusion until all that's left is clarity. You see what matters and what never did. And in that simplicity, peace returns. Then finally, the Stoic's cornerstone reveals itself, the dichotomy of control. The truth that changed everything. Some things are within your control. Everything else is not. The weather, the opinions of others, the past, the outcome. All beyond you. But your perception, your effort, your response, those are yours, always have been. You stop trying to control outcomes and start mastering input. You stop obsessing over what might happen and focus on what you can do right now. And with that focus comes liberation. Because most suffering isn't from what happens, it's from wishing things were different. The Stoics called that the root of all unnecessary pain, resistance to reality. But when you finally accept what's outside your control, you stop fighting the river. You learn to flow with it. And that flow is freedom. You no longer need the world to cooperate for you to be at peace. You no longer need people to understand for you to stay grounded. You no longer need certainty to feel safe. Because your safety comes from sovereignty, the inner knowing that no matter what happens, you can handle it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Does what happened keep you from acting with justice, generosity, self-control, sanity, prudence, honesty, humility, straightforwardness, and all other virtues? If not, then don't be upset. The obstacle is only in your mind." And suddenly you see it. Every obstacle was a test of your perception. Every setback was an invitation to return to the only place peace has ever existed, within. That's when you stop saying, "I'll be happy when," and start saying, "I am peaceful now." You stop trying to fix life and start flowing through it. You stop trying to control the world and start mastering yourself. Because true mastery is not domination, it's alignment. It's walking through chaos and staying calm. It's facing uncertainty and staying steady. It's being surrounded by noise and remaining still. And that's the paradox. When you stop trying to control life, you finally begin to live it. You've reframed the struggle. You've reclaimed your perception. You've remembered your power. Now everything changes. Not because the world shifts, but because your mind does. And that shift is irreversible. Now that your perception has shifted, you begin to feel the power returning to where it's always belonged, inside. The noise doesn't disappear, but it loses authority. The world still moves, still shouts, still demands, but you no longer bow to its rhythm. You rise to your own. Because the Stoic path is not about escaping the world. It's about mastering your movement within it. Every morning becomes your dojo, your sacred space to practice peace before the day begins. And like any form of mastery, it starts with repetition, the daily reaffirmation of truth. 5 pillars, 5 disciplines for the mind, 5 ways to return to yourself. Pillar 1, I choose my response. In those 4 words lives your freedom. You may not control what happens, but you always control what it becomes inside you. Every event, every emotion, every challenge presents a fork in the road: react or respond. Reaction is instinct. Response is mastery. Reaction is chaos. Response is clarity. Reaction is born from fear. Response is born from wisdom. When you say, "I choose my response," you remind yourself that your inner peace doesn't depend on the outer world. You become the space between stimulus and reaction, the sacred pause Viktor Frankl called our power to choose. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Every time you choose calm over anger, patience over haste, compassion over judgment, you strengthen that space. You widen the distance between impulse and intention. You train your nervous system to follow wisdom instead of emotion. This is neuroplasticity in motion, your mind learning a new way to exist. So when the next challenge arises, don't rush to control the situation. Control your stance within it. Whisper inwardly, "I choose my response." And in that single breath, you turn chaos into clarity, confusion into direction. Pillar 2, growth lives here. Every morning you face a choice: to resist what is or to grow through it. The Stoics knew that adversity isn't the enemy of peace, it's the training ground for it. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." The same way your muscles grow from resistance, your mind expands through challenge. When you say growth lives here, you stop asking for easy days. You start asking for honest ones. You stop running from discomfort because you know it's the sculptor of strength. You look at each setback and say, "Here lies my evolution." You look at failure and see data, not defeat. You look at pain and see instruction, not punishment. This is amor fati in action, the love of your own unfolding. You stop labeling experiences as good or bad. You see everything as necessary. The missed opportunity, the heartbreak, the delay, All are chisels shaping the marble of your soul. And as you repeat this affirmation, something shifts. Struggle no longer feels like suffering. It feels like training. You stop being a victim of your experience and become a student of it. You start to realize everything that happens for growth, and growth lives here. Pillar 3. Today matters most. The anxious mind lives in the future. The regretful mind lives in the past. The peaceful mind lives in the present. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." When you say, "Today matters most," you pull yourself back into the only time that ever truly exists now. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You realize that the perfect moment is the one you're breathing in. The Stoics lived each day as a lifetime, complete, self-contained, and sacred. Because tomorrow isn't promised. Yesterday cannot be changed. The present is all you ever hold. And every morning you have the power to make it count, to give it meaning through focus, gratitude, and effort. So as you rise, say to yourself, "Today is not preparation for life. It is life." Live it awake. Live it deliberately. Live it with the calm intensity of someone who knows this moment will never come again. Because when you start honoring each day as sacred, you stop waiting for your life to begin. You realize it already has. Pillar 4. I am enough. This one is the hardest and the most important. The mind, conditioned by the world, will whisper endlessly that you're behind, that you need more to be whole. That peace is found somewhere beyond your current self. But the Stoic truth shatters that illusion. You were already enough the moment you began breathing. I am enough is not complacency, it's alignment. It's the recognition that you are a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time, that you can strive for better without despising who you are, that you can evolve without rejecting your roots. When you say, "I am enough," you reclaim your worth from the external. You stop looking for mirrors in other people's opinions. You stop begging the world to validate what was always true. You begin to act from love instead of lack. The world sells the illusion that peace is something to earn. But self-love, true Stoic self-love, is the courage to stand in imperfection and call it sacred. It's saying, "Even as I grow, I am whole." And in that recognition, the war within quiets. You no longer chase wholeness, you practice it. You no longer run toward peace, you stand in it. Because you are enough, even as you evolve. Pillar 5. I release control. This is where the deepest peace lies. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control, the wisdom to separate what you can control from what you cannot. Every morning, you face hundreds of moments where the mind will try to cling, to manipulate, to predict. It's not evil, it's scared. Control is the illusion the ego builds to protect itself from uncertainty. But peace begins where control ends. When you say, "I release control," you surrender the need to shape every outcome. You return to the present, to effort, to integrity, to clarity. You trust that what's meant for you will arrive and what's not will fall away. You replace force with flow, anxiety with awareness. Releasing control doesn't mean apathy, it means alignment. It's doing your best with full presence and letting the rest unfold as it must. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" When you live by this truth, nothing can shake you. The winds can change, the path can twist, but you remain grounded. Because peace is not found in predicting outcomes, it's found in trusting your ability to face them. So every morning, before the world begins its noise, return to these 5 pillars. Whisper them like sacred vows to your own mind. I choose my response. Growth lives here. Today matters most. I am enough. I release control. Let them become more than words. Let them become your wiring. Let them guide your mornings, your choices, your life. Because affirmations are not about convincing yourself of something false. They are reminders of something eternal. They are the bridge between thought and embodiment, the daily rehearsal of truth until it becomes reflex. And over time, the mind that once chased peace begins to create it. The voice that once doubted begins to trust. The storm that once controlled you begins to teach you. This is how you train your mind every morning, not with noise but with knowing, not with reaction but with remembrance, not by forcing yourself to be someone new but by remembering the power of who you've always been. You've repeated the words. You've faced the storms. You've watched your mind shift from chaos to calm. Now comes the quiet work, the integration, the unseen discipline of turning philosophy into embodiment, knowledge into instinct, thought into identity. This is where understanding becomes transformation, because wisdom, no matter how profound, is useless until it becomes lived. Integration begins not in moments of inspiration, but in the ordinary, the quiet routines, the subtle choices, the seconds between thoughts. This is where the Stoic path leaves the realm of theory and enters the neural architecture of your being. Modern science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself through repetition. The Stoics didn't know the term, but they lived its truth. Every morning meditation, every moment of restraint, every act of conscious awareness carved new pathways into the mind. They understood what neuroscience now confirms, that attention is the sculptor of identity. What you repeatedly focus on, you become. Every reaction is a signal to your nervous system, every thought a blueprint for your future self. The brain does not distinguish between imagination and experience. It builds what you rehearse, which means every time you practice patience, gratitude, or courage, you are physically reshaping your mind toward peace. You are teaching your neurons to prefer discipline over distraction, calm over chaos, truth over noise. That is why philosophy must be lived, not read. Because wisdom alone doesn't rewire the brain, repetition does. The Stoics trained their minds daily because they understood that without daily practice, philosophy fades into poetry. It becomes something you admire instead of something you embody. So you rise each morning and return to the forge. You sit with your thoughts before the world enters. You observe your emotions before they consume you. You remind yourself, I choose my response. Growth lives here. Today matters most. I am enough. I release control. These are not affirmations of comfort, they are anchors of awareness. And awareness is everything. Viktor Frankl wrote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That is the essence of Stoic integration, self-transformation through self-awareness. You can't control the tides, but you can learn to sail. You can't silence the storm, but you can quiet the sailor within. When awareness deepens, you begin to notice the machinery of the mind, the thoughts that arise, the emotions that follow, the impulses that seek release. But instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of drowning in thought, you watch thought. And that shift from identification to observation is liberation. The Stoics called this the view from above, a practice of perspective. Imagine rising above your life, looking down on your fears, your habits, your desires, your struggles, seeing them for what they are, small ripples on a vast ocean. From that altitude, the waves lose their power. You see that what once felt overwhelming is just weather passing through the mind. And with that view, you return to stillness. Neuroscience mirrors this ancient wisdom. When you observe your thoughts without judgment, what mindfulness calls meta-awareness, your brain shifts from the limbic system, the emotional center, to the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought. You literally rewire your ability to stay calm under stress. Observation becomes the bridge from reaction to resilience. This is the union of Stoicism and science philosophy as neurotraining. Every pause, every breath, every moment of restraint sends a signal. I am not my emotion. I am the space that holds it. Over time, those signals become pathways. And those pathways become your default state, not panic, not anger, but peace. Discipline, then, is not punishment. It is rewiring. It is teaching your body to trust your mind and your mind to trust your principles. It is alignment between thought and action. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Neuroscience agrees most suffering is predictive. The brain anticipates pain before it arrives, but awareness interrupts that pattern. It says, "Stay here. This moment is safe. Respond, don't react." Through integration, you begin to notice the power of presence. The day becomes a meditation, the walk to work, the conversation, the silence before sleep. Every act becomes an opportunity to practice virtue. Every challenge becomes a reminder of control. You stop separating philosophy from life because you understand they are the same. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations to be quoted, he wrote it to survive himself. His words were not meant for others, they were reminders to his own mind. And so must yours be. Integration is not about external validation, it's about internal reinforcement. It's about writing your own meditations through the way you live, breathe, and act. There will be days when you fall, when the noise is too loud, when emotion wins, when you forget everything you've learned. On those days, remember, falling is part of wiring. Each time you return to awareness, you strengthen the connection. Each time you forgive yourself, you teach your mind resilience. Growth is not linear, it's cyclical. You spiral upward, revisiting old lessons with deeper understanding. And slowly, without announcement, without recognition, you notice change. The world that once provoked you now feels quieter. The challenges that once broke you now feel lighter. You respond where you once reacted. You breathe where you once shouted. You stand tall in storms that once made you crumble. That is integration, philosophy made flesh, wisdom made reflex. It's not perfection you're chasing, it's consistency. The Stoics didn't seek to become gods, they sought to become grounded humans, anchored, aware, unshaken. You learn to live the truth that peace is not a destination but a discipline. It's the result of practicing stillness in motion, presence in chaos, clarity in confusion. Integration is the art of remembering, moment after moment, that your mind is the architect of everything, that the external is the canvas, and your perception the brush, that your habits are the bricks of identity, laid one conscious act at a time. So train your mind like you train a muscle, not once but daily. Feed it with focus. Strengthen it with silence. Challenge it with discipline. Rest it with gratitude. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up in a peace you no longer have to seek. Because peace will have become your natural state, not a visitor but a resident. This is the Stoic path reborn through modern understanding, ancient wisdom grounded in biological truth. The brain is the forge, awareness is the fire, and discipline is the hammer. Every choice you make is a strike of that hammer shaping who you become. And in time, you'll look back and realize, the mind you once fought against has become your greatest ally. The noise that once consumed you has become the background music to your clarity. You didn't escape the chaos, you learned to conduct it. That is integration, that is freedom, hey warrior. Take a breath, not the shallow one the world taught you, the one that only fills your lungs halfway, but a full, deliberate breath that reaches your core. Feel it rise, feel it fall, feel the quiet that follows. This is where the journey ends and begins again. You've walked through the storm, you've faced the mirror. You've seen the truth of yourself, unpolished, unguarded, unafraid. You've tasted pain, confusion, doubt, and somewhere within that chaos, you found something steady. You found awareness. You found control. You found peace. This is the paradox of the path. You searched for strength in the world, but it was always buried in your stillness. You chased purpose in the distance, only to find it was waiting in the space between breaths. You thought you had to become someone new, but in truth, you were only remembering who you've always been, powerful, grounded, free. The world will not change when you finish this. It will still test you. It will still tempt you, but you will meet it differently now. You will walk slower, speak softer, choose more wisely, because you've learned that the most powerful presence is the one that doesn't need to prove anything. Remember this, mastery isn't about eliminating emotion, it's about understanding it. Fear will still visit, doubt will still whisper, but now they don't control you. You'll greet them like old friends who have outlived their power. You'll nod, smile, and continue walking, because you know who you are, you know what matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That sentence, once just ink on a page, now beats inside you. You've lived it. You've felt it. You've seen how the moment you take ownership of your inner world, the outer one loses its grip. You can't always choose your circumstances, but you can always choose your stance. And that's what defines a Stoic, not indifference, but awareness. Not numbness, but presence. You've learned that peace isn't a lack of feeling, it's the ability to feel deeply without losing your balance, to love without attachment, to act without fear, to endure without bitterness. You understand now that control was never the goal, clarity was. You no longer need to predict the storm, because you've become the calm inside it. You no longer need to force outcomes, because you trust your ability to adapt. You no longer fear endings, because you know every ending hides a beginning in disguise. Look back for a moment, not to dwell, but to honor the ground you've walked. Every mistake was a lesson in disguise. Every heartbreak was a door disguised as loss. Every moment of silence was an invitation to return home to yourself. You learned patience from the waiting, strength from the falling, courage from the rebuilding. You learned that nothing was wasted, not even the pain. And now, standing here, breathing with intention, you finally understand the simplest and hardest truth of all. You are responsible for the atmosphere within your own mind. No one else. Not your past. Not the people who hurt you. Not the circumstances you couldn't control. You, always you. Responsibility is freedom in disguise. Because once you stop waiting for someone else to save you, you realize you never needed saving. You needed remembering. You needed awareness. You needed the stillness that tells you this is your life. Don't waste it watching the waves become the tide. So let this be your vow, to walk forward with intention, to meet each day as a teacher, to let go of the illusion that peace is something to be found. Peace is not a destination. It's a decision made moment by moment, breath by breath. There will be days you forget, days when the world feels heavy again. But when that happens, return to your pillars, return to the fire. Remember that every time you fall, the getting up is the training. Every time you feel lost, the searching is the path. Because the Stoic way is not perfection, it's perseverance. It's the courage to continue refining yourself, even when the world isn't watching. It's the humility to accept that mastery is infinite, and that you will spend your life learning how to return, again and again, to what matters. You have walked from confusion to clarity, from noise to stillness, from reaction to response. You've watched your thoughts like clouds and realized you are the sky. You've understood that calm is not the absence of the storm. It's the realization that the storm can't touch what's eternal within you. And as you stand in that awareness, a quiet truth emerges. You are not the product of what happened to you. You are the result of how you chose to respond. You are not a collection of your fears, but of your courage. You are not the sum of your wounds, but of your willingness to heal them. Now you see the world as it is, not through illusion, but through presence. You understand that joy and sorrow, gain and loss, light and dark are not enemies. They are dance partners in the rhythm of existence. You cannot separate them, but you can flow between them with grace. That is peace. That is balance. Let the world do what it does. Let the seasons change. Let the people come and go. You remain, a still flame in a moving world, a quiet strength that no storm can shake, a reminder that true power has nothing to do with domination and everything to do with composure. So when you rise tomorrow, before the noise, before the world begins its demand, sit in silence. Breathe. Whisper to yourself the truth you've come to know. I am not what happens to me. I am how I choose to meet it. I am not my thoughts. I am the space they move through. I am not searching for peace. I am peace remembering itself. And when the day unfolds, when traffic delays, when tempers flare, when uncertainty comes knocking, return to that stillness. That space within you that no circumstance can touch. Because that's where all of this leads, to that silent, immovable awareness beneath the noise, to the realization that you were never broken, only becoming. So now take another breath. Feel the weight of this moment, the vastness of it, the simplicity, the sacredness, because right here, right now in this stillness, you are free. You have walked the path of the Stoics, from struggle to surrender, from reaction to realization. You've learned that the mind, when mastered, is the greatest fortress you'll ever build. And as the echoes fade, as the world returns to its rhythm, let this final truth settle into you, the culmination of all you've learned, all you've become, all you are still becoming. I am the architect of my mind.